The sirens screamed across the cold waters of San Francisco Bay. Guards ran in every direction, shouting orders. A helicopter hovered above the island, its searchlight sweeping across the dark waves. Prisoners screamed from their cells as the lights inside Alcatraz flickered, then went out completely. The island known as the Rock had gone silent. Something terrible had happened that night, something the government swore would never be made public. It was the night that forced them to shut down Alcatraz forever. A warden's voice cracked over the loudspeaker. "All units, contain cell block D. Repeat, contain cell block D before—" But the sentence never finished. A loud explosion shook the prison walls. The floor trembled beneath the guards' boots. The lights came back on, just long enough for everyone to see it. One of the cells had blown open, and smoke filled the hallway. When it cleared, what the guards saw made their blood run cold. Inside that open cell was nobody. The most dangerous inmate in Alcatraz had vanished, and that was the moment everything began to unravel. Weeks earlier, Alcatraz was still running like a perfect machine. The guards were strict, the inmates were watched, and the rules were unbreakable. The prison sat in the middle of the freezing bay, surrounded by water so cold no one could survive a swim across. They called it escape-proof. But that was before a man named Frank Doyle arrived. Frank wasn't just any prisoner. He was clever, too clever. He had robbed 4 banks in 3 different states and had outsmarted the FBI twice before they caught him. When he was brought to Alcatraz, the guards thought he'd finally met his match. At first, Frank seemed quiet. He followed orders, worked in the laundry, and never caused trouble. But some inmates whispered that Frank was planning something. They said he talked to himself at night, making strong notes on scraps of cloth. One evening, while cleaning near the boiler room, Frank noticed a vent loose on the wall. Behind it, he saw old tunnels built during the prison's early days. He realized there was a way beneath the island, something the guards had forgotten. That same night, strange things began happening. Tools went missing. Keys disappeared, and one guard, Officer Miller, reported hearing noises coming from the walls, like whispers traveling through the pipes. The warden, Mr. Reynolds, didn't believe him. "It's the wind," he said. "This island makes men imagine things." But soon even the warden began to notice. Doors were found open when they shouldn't be. Prisoners claimed they saw shadows moving at night, long after lights out. One stormy evening, as lightning flashed across the sky, the alarms went off. A cell was empty. Frank Doyle was gone. Guards rushed through the halls, shouting, "He's escaped! Doyle's escaped!" But when they checked the gates and docks, everything was locked tight. There was no boat missing, no broken fence, no sign of a swim. It was as if Frank had vanished into thin air. Days later, the island's generator began to fail. Lights flickered every night, strange hums echoed through the corridors, and guards started quitting one by one, refusing to stay on night duty. Then, one morning, a guard found something chilling written on the wall of Frank's old cell. It was written in soot, rough and smeared. "The rock has cracks, and I found one." That same night, a huge blast shook the entire island. Sirens blared, smoke filled the air. The main power grid exploded, and as guards ran toward the sound, one shouted something that froze everyone in place. "Cell block D is collapsing." The prison shook, walls splitting apart, alarms howling, and deep inside the smoke and chaos, someone or something was moving in the dark. That was the night Alcatraz would never recover from, the night that started the shutdown. The explosion had turned Alcatraz into chaos. Smoke poured from the windows, guards stumbled through debris, and prisoners screamed inside their locked cells. The entire island trembled as if the sea beneath it was roaring back to life. When the smoke began to clear, Warden Reynolds forced his way through the wreckage of Cell Block D. "Report," he shouted. "Where's Doyle?" but none of the guards could answer. Every camera, every light, every radio, dead. The power room was destroyed. They couldn't even reach the mainland to call for help. Then one of the guards, a young officer named Brooks, pointed toward the far end of the hall. "Sir, you might want to see this." There, in the cracked wall of Doyle's old cell, was a hole, no bigger than a man's shoulders, leading into the old maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the island. The warden's face went pale. Those tunnels hadn't been used for over 50 years. Most people didn't even know they existed. "Seal that off," Reynolds ordered. "Nobody goes down there until I say so." But it was too late, because when they looked closer, they saw muddy handprints along the tunnel wall, still wet. Doyle had gone underground. By morning, the island was in lockdown. Extra guards arrived by boat, and soldiers stood at every entrance. The prisoners whispered through the bars, spreading stories faster than the guards could stop them. Some said Doyle had escaped. Others said he'd died in the blast and was haunting the tunnels. But one inmate, a quiet man named Henry Blake, swore he heard someone moving under the floor that night. He said he heard heavy footsteps and a low laugh echoing through the pipes. The warden dismissed it as nonsense, but even he couldn't ignore what came next. Every night after the explosion, strange noises echoed through Alcatraz. Doors slammed on their own. Chains rattled in empty rooms. The temperature, in the lower levels, dropped so cold that guards could see their breath. One night, Officer Brooks volunteered to go into the tunnels with 2 others to find Doyle. They carried flashlights and ropes, stepping into the dark hole one by one. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. The air was damp and smelled like rust. Water dripped from the ceiling. The tunnels twisted and branched like a maze. Then they saw something ahead, light flickering at the end of a corridor. They followed it carefully until they reached a small chamber, half flooded with seawater. In the middle of the room lay an old generator that no one had used in decades. It was humming softly, as if someone had turned it on. Beside it lay a piece of fabric torn from a prison uniform, Doyle's number still visible on it. "Looks like we found where he's been hiding," Brooks whispered. But before they could take another step, the generator suddenly sputtered and went dark. The entire tunnel went pitch black. Then came a whisper, "You shouldn't have come down here." Brooks spun around, shining his flashlight, but the beam only caught wet stone walls and dripping pipes. No one was there. The whisper came again, closer this time. "Go back." Brooks started backing away. "Who's there? Doyle? Show yourself." No answer. Just the sound of water sloshing. And then, suddenly, the beam of his flashlight caught something that froze him in place. A pair of muddy footprints, appearing on the ground in front of him, one by one, as if someone invisible was walking toward him. Brooks screamed, dropping his light. The other guards ran, scrambling out of the tunnels, shouting for help. When they finally climbed back into the cell block, they were pale, shaking, unable to speak. Warden Reynolds demanded, "What happened down there?" Brooks stared at him, eyes wide. "Sir, Doyle's not just hiding. He's doing something down there, something with the island." That night, Alcatraz was placed under full evacuation watch. No one slept. The fog rolled in thick over the bay, covering the island in ghostly silence. But at exactly 3 a.m., every light on Alcatraz flickered back on by itself. And then, through the loudspeakers, the ones that hadn't worked in days, came a voice. Calm, slow, familiar. It said, "This island belongs to me now." The voice was Frank Doyle's. And that was when everyone realized Alcatraz wasn't shutting down because of an escape. Something far darker had begun. The loudspeaker crackled with Doyle's voice again, echoing through the stone corridors of Alcatraz. "You locked me in here to rot," he said, "but this island listens to me now." Guards froze in place, Prisoners pressed their faces against the bars, terrified. The warden grabbed the nearest radio, yelling into it, "Mainland Control, do you copy? This is Warden Reynolds. Alcatraz is compromised." No response, only static. Then, slowly, the lights began to dim again, one by one, until the whole prison was swallowed in darkness. The air grew cold, and everyone heard it. Footsteps on the upper walkway, heavy and slow, echoing above them even though no one could be seen. The guards pointed their flashlights, but every beam flickered out as if swallowed by the dark. "Everyone to the boats!" the warden shouted. "Now!" But the gates wouldn't open. The electric locks had frozen, and the generator, the one they thought was destroyed, was somehow running again, deep under the island. Warden Reynolds turned to Brooks. "You know the tunnels. Take me there." Brooks hesitated, trembling. "Sir, I'm not going back down there. He's not human anymore." "Now!" the warden barked. So they went, 2 guards and the warden, back into the darkness. The tunnels smelled worse than before, like salt and burnt metal. Their flashlights shook in their hands as they moved deeper. They followed the sound of the humming generato, yaw, which grew louder the farther they went. Then they entered the same chamber where Brooks had seen the footprints. This time it wasn't empty. The generator was glowing faint blue. Sparks flickered around it, lighting up strange symbols carved into the walls, symbols no one remembered seeing before. Doyle stood near it, wearing a shredded uniform, his face half covered in grime. But his eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the blue light. "You shouldn't have come," Doyle said softly. "I told you, this island listens to me now." "What have you done, Doyle?" the warden demanded. Doyle laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "You made me disappear. You buried me under this place, so I became part of it." He pointed to the generator. "These tunnels lead straight into the sea. Power runs through them. You cut it off from the world, but I turned it back on. This island doesn't want guards. It doesn't want prisoners. It wants to rest." "Turn it off," the warden ordered. "Now!" Doyle stepped closer. "You can't turn off what's already awake." And then the ground began to shake. Water burst through the cracks in the floor, spraying into the air. The tunnel lights flickered wildly as alarms blared across the island again. "Run!" Brooks yelled. They ran through the tunnel as the floor split apart behind them. Steam poured from broken pipes. The whole island roared like a monster waking up after years of sleep. When they finally reached the surface, the prison yard was flooding. The walls cracked, the fences collapsed, and the lighthouse on the far side of the island fell into the sea with a thunderous crash. Guards and prisoners alike raced toward the docks, pushing boats into the rough waves. Warden Reynolds looked back one last time. Through the smoke and lightning, he saw Doyle standing at the top of the prison steps, watching them leave. The blue light from below flickered. Behind him, glowing through the cracks in the ground. Then Doyle raised his hand, and the entire power grid exploded. A blinding flash lit up the sky. The sound thundered across the bay. By morning, Alcatraz was gone. Only the outer walls remained, smoking and cracked. The island was declared unsafe, structurally unstable, the government said. But those who survived knew the truth. They were told never to speak of what happened that night. The official report claimed it was a gas leak in the lower tunnels. But guards who were there whispered something else, that the island itself had shut down, because something deep beneath Alcatraz didn't want to be woken again. Years later, visitors to San Francisco Bay say they still see faint blue light coming from the ruins on foggy nights. And if you listen closely when the wind is still, you might hear a man's voice carried across the water. Calm, slow, and haunting. "This island belongs to me now, and that's why they shut down Alcatraz."